The next place that I'd like to take you is into the licenses app. So the licenses are kind of the meat, I would say, of your ERM sandwich. So this is where you can track um, not only you can store copies of a particular license agreement or terms of use that you may have, but you can also kind of track those on a more granular level um, and make those terms of use available to your end users if you so choose. So the licenses app is typically going to be the bulk of it are going to be the business terms and the terms of use that you have established with your vendor. So I've created one here that I wanted to use as kind of the basis for our discussion. To create it, what I did was I went into Actions and New. I entered in my required information, which we're going to take a look at on that record. The only required fields are name, type, and status, and then I saved and closed it. But I used the EBSCO standard license as kind of the basis for our discussion here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Actions and Edit. And so I have my name here. I have my type. Your types in your folio tenant may look different than mine. These are every folio tenant's going to come with 4 types, local, consortial, national, and alliance preloaded, but you do have the ability to customize that list. So you can either change the label for the type, or you can add new types. You can get rid of types so long as they're not already in use. And then you can select your type here. This is also a search filter that can be used within the licenses app. And then I have my status here. And the status is meant to take you through all of the various stages of a license. So maybe I start to negotiate and then we decide to reject it. Maybe we were on a trial and then we rejected the trial, so we're going to reject the license. Or maybe I go from in negotiation to, yes, we're going to subscribe to this particular package with this license, but it's not yet active. It's going to become active in my new fiscal year. And so then I can transition from not yet active to an active status. So what for the life of this license and its application to the resources that we're subscribing to. And then perhaps the license expires and is superseded by a new license. Start and end dates are optional on the license record, but they are helpful because they do display in your search results. And when we get to talking about the dashboard app, you can create some cool widgets for license management if you have start and end dates here. If I designate something as open-ended, this end date will be grayed out and the license will appear as open-ended in search results as well. My description here, I am using it just for a very brief description of what this license is meant to cover, but I can use this for whatever I would like, and it displays pretty prominently on the license record itself. And then I have alternative names here, kind of mimicking what you saw in the organizations app, giving me different points of contact or different points for searching this particular license. These are not required fields until you add them, but then if I wanted to save, I would need to just get rid of these empty fields if I'm not planning to use them before saving. Moving down through, I do have a space for internal contacts. This actually links to your users app. So if I add an internal contact, I'm going to link a user. This brings up a search modal that allows me to select a staff member, and I'm just going to select Adriana here, and then assign them a role in relation to this license. So Adele is my license owner, but maybe Adriana is going to be my acquisition specialist for the resources covered in this license. So the internal contacts allow you to designate who is the staff member that I should go to when I have questions about this particular license. And you can add as many internal contacts as you'd like. And these roles are customizable in your license settings. So if you are in your Folio tenant, you say, none of these roles really match what anybody in our library does, you can update these roles. You can add new roles in your license pick list administration section. Scrolling on down, we have our organizations. So the reason I started with organizations in our training is because you can then use organizations as a building block in the other record types that we're going to deal with. So I've already set up my EBSCO organization and I'm able to add them here as the licensor. I can also, as of the Kiwi release, I can add additional roles for this organization. So if EBSCO is also my subscription manager, for instance, I can add that here. And then I can set a primary organization on the record. What this does is this just displays that organization's name prominently on the license record. So when I go to save this at the end, when I save and close and we see this license in view mode, EBSCO will be listed in the upper right-hand corner as the primary organization associated with the license. And I can add another organization. So if this license were perhaps negotiated by a consortium I belong to, I could add that organization. I can link the organization, and this will bring up a modal that allows me to search within my organization's app and select one here. When I add an organization, I do need to assign it at least one role. So I'm going to get rid of that because that doesn't belong on this license. Scrolling on down, core documents. This is, we are creating a license record in Folio that contains a lot of the key information that we're sourcing from the license agreement itself. However, you may want to have a link to or a copy of that license so that if you need to go back and cite chapter and verse for a particular stipulation, you have the ability to do that fairly quickly. So when I add a core document, I need to name it, and then I need to do at least one of the three. I either need to upload a copy, I need to specify a physical location. So that might be, the shelf at the end of the reference desk is where you store this. Or I need to specify a URL, which is what I did in the case of the EBSCO license agreement. So this creates an external link that I'll be able to click on and quickly access the license agreement itself. And then we come down to our terms. Now, there are two different kinds of terms in Folio. You have primary terms, which means this term is going to appear on every single license record that I create. It doesn't mean I'm required to fill it in, but it is going to appear on every single license record. The only one that I have designated primary in my Folio tenant is authorized user definition. Everything else in my Folio tenant is designated as an optional term. And what that means is I can choose to add this on a license by license basis using this add term. When I do that, I can select any of the terms from my settings that are listed as optional terms. So if I wanted to say, what does this license say about walk-in users? I can say yes, and perhaps I can use my internal note to cite the actual portion of this license that speaks to walk-in users. And so you can see that I've done that here with my fair use clause. I've actually inserted the chapter and verse here. I do want to take a moment just to say, if you're looking in your Folio tenant, you're like, I don't have that term. That is completely normal. Terms are what are considered custom properties in licenses. So every library could be tracking different terms. That being said, we do have a number of kind of default terms that our implementation team can load into your Folio tenant for you to allow you to not have to start from scratch. And so you can go through and say, yes, we do want to track ILL permissions for our electronic resources. So we do want to use that. But we don't really care about scholarly sharing. That's not something that we're ever going to track on our license record. So you could get rid of that term in your specific folio tenant. So mine has quite a few. Yours may have fewer. I've worked with libraries that only track, 3 or 4 different terms. And so those are all going to be specified in your license settings. And then when you configure these, you're providing a name, you're providing a description, which is what pops up next to um, the little information bubble here. I can click on that to say, what is it that this term is trying to accomplish? How should I fill this in? And then you're also designating, do I want my visibility to be public by default or internal by default? And that speaks to an integration with Classic Publication Finder through EBSCO. If you have a term that is designated for public visibility, then that can be configured to display in Classic Publication Finder alongside the resources covered in a specific agreement. So we'll get there in just a moment.
There's a question, will you actually show that placard or?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I will. That'll be kind of at the end of the training, we'll come full circle to show you that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Something to look forward to.
Absolutely, a teaser to make sure everybody sticks around. And when something is public, it will show both the value as well as any public note that you may have entered. This internal note field will only ever show up to staff using the Folio interface. It will not appear even if the visibility is public here. Only this public note will. And you should also note that there are different kinds of terms. So you'll see here that my authorized user is actually a free text field. So I can enter in whatever I want to here. And then the rest of these are pick lists. So my pick lists have different values to them, and that is all configured in your license terms. Once you have created a license term, you can edit pretty much anything about it. The only thing that you cannot change is the type of term it is. So you can't switch something from being a pick list to free text or vice versa, because the system doesn't know how to convert a free text field into a controlled type of field like a pick list. So if your implementation consultant has loaded in license terms for you and you like the license term, but you want it to be a different type of term, you'll want to recreate it using the type that you want to use before you start applying it on your licenses. So once I've configured my terms here, the last place that I have to go is my supplementary documents. This is optional, but some libraries like to add things like maybe an order form that relates to the specific license, a data sheet, a consortium authorization statement if this is a license that you subscribe to via your consortium. And so you can attach that here. So where the core document is kind of meant to be, this is the actual license agreement, or these are the actual, terms of use. The supplementary documents allow you to add in supplemental information that is relevant to this license. The same terms apply here. I need to specify a name, and then I need to do at least one of the 3. Upload, specify a physical location, or specify a URL. And then once I am done, I can save and close. And just to note a couple of things here, I do see my primary organization of EBSCO in the upper right-hand corner, just as I said we would. I can see that my record was created on April 13th, but was last updated today at 10:55 a.m. local. And then I can expand all to see everything here, or I can collapse all and then look at specific parts of the license record. So if I just wanted to see my internal contacts, Anytime you see something in blue, and when I hover over it, I get my little hand icon, this is going to be a direct link to another app. So if I click on this, I'm actually going to be brought to Adele's record within the user's app. Here, I do have the ability to add my notes as we did earlier. And you'll also see that we have a section here called amendments. And so under amendments, you might have a license record that you're not negotiating a new license, but later on in the life cycle of the license, there is an amendment that maybe a term has changed. And so here, if I click Add Amendment, I'm presented with basically a new license form. It has almost all of the same um, fields as the license record itself, but this is kind of an add-on to your license. And so here I'm going to say that this is 2022 amendment, and then I'm going to just say there is an adjustment to authorized users. And so here I can say my authorized user definition is, I wish everyone can use this. This is a pipe dream, but I can specify that this term has changed, and then I can save from here. And so I can see the terms of this amendment, and you'll also see agreements linked to the parent license. So my EBSCO eJournal agreement, we're going to go there in a little bit. The license record, the EBSCO standard license, is the controlling license for an agreement I have created in the Agreements app. I will then be able to assign whether or not this amendment applies to a specific agreement or not. Because the thing about licenses is I could have one EBSCO standard license, but I could have 10 different agreements that that license applies to. And so maybe EBSCO has amended the terms for the resources on agreement A, but agreement B, C, D, E, F have still just the standard terms applied. So in this case, I can create the amendment to cover that, but I'll only apply it to the agreements for the resources where that amendment is valid.
So here's a good question, Molly,
Yeah.
from a user Folio, using Folio across multiple campuses. How
Mhm.
would we scope licenses for the specific campuses? Would we set up a type for each campus, or would there be a different way to handle this?
Yeah, so that is a fantastic question. And I think that there's a couple of different ways that you could approach this. I think having a separate license type is one way to approach it. Using a naming convention. So, I believe it's the 5 colleges that does this. They kind of precede, well, they don't use licenses, but they do this for agreements. They precede their agreement names with kind of their campus name. I will say that there is a feature within the Folio community for establishing kind of ERM teams in a similar way to acquisitions units, where when you have multiple campuses or multiple institutions sharing a Folio tenant, but that has delineation between their ERM resources, that you could kind of create teams for campus A and campus B, and then apply those teams to a specific record. So if you're on team campus A, if you're on team campus A, you can only see records that are assigned to Team Campus A. So there is growing support for that as we get more Folio adopters in that particular situation. And then the but in the meantime, people are using either types, naming conventions, or in some cases, tags, which are kind of a platform-wide feature of Folio that allow you to tag certain things to, um, so in the upper right-hand corner here, under tags, you can see here that I have 2 tags in my Folio tenant. I could create a tag for Campus A and a tag for Campus B, apply those to the appropriate records, and then filter by those tags here to just see those licenses. All right. And then last but not least, you can duplicate a license. When you do that, you'll have the ability to choose certain portions to duplicate, or you can delete a license. Once again, I do recommend, unless you are 100% sure that you want to get rid of a particular license and all of its history, all of its information, you may want to, rather than deleting, you may want to edit and designate a license as inactive or expired or rejected, rather than deleting it and losing that history. All right. So we have covered our organizations and our licenses, and we'll finish out with e-holdings agreements in the dashboard app.